This time of year we remember that in power you sent Jesus into the world to identify with the poor and the homeless and the refugee. And we remember that later in life he used his power to care for, help and support people. We pray that as we gather today, that you would enable us to use our power to care for the communities which we serve. We ask that you would give wisdom to all who are here and guidance in all the matters to be undertaken, that through them people may be blessed and benefit day by day. And we ask too that you would give all the resources that are needed in these difficult days to enable that continuing support. We commit our time into your hands. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. We'll start with agenda item 1, declarations of interest. I would like to kick off, please, with a declaration of interest from myself for agenda item 17, which will be taken by the Vice Chair. Are there any other declarations of interest, please? Councillor Rogers.
Yes, a non-pecuniary declaration of interest in item number 17, as I'm a director of the Island Partnership.
I would just comment that that's the same for me, non-pecuniary as a director of Island Partnership. Councillor Jonathan Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, a non-pecuniary interest in item 13, as I'm an advisory board member of the community venture.
Councillor Molson.
Yeah, item 17, as I am a director of a community interest company, brackets transport, non-pecuniary in item 17.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
A non-pecuniary interest in item 16 as a trustee at the health centre over here, so I'll judge it on the way the conversation goes on that particular item, whether I leave the chamber or not.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Agenda item 12, if there's a discussion on the early years provision at Congwavel, I will leave the room.
Thank you. Councillor Barclay.
Yes, I declare an interest in any matters relating to transport as coordinator of FRIST.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest in that I represent the Council on the Cornwall Partnership Trust, so this will be especially relevant to agenda item 16. And I'm also a trustee of the Edward MacDonald Trust, should that come up in reference to the play park discussion in the capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any issues with regarding that, please, or can we take those as read?
I'm happy to propose them as accurate.
Thank you, Councillor Sims.
I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Mumford.
Sorry, there was actually...
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. There was just an issue I wanted to bring up. On page 3, discussion around the release of balloons. Actually, just to point out on the second sentence, there wasn't actually going to be a ban across the whole of the AONB as yet, but there was provisional support for that. Just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. So we've had a proposer and seconder for the minutes. All those in favour, please. Thank you. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Chairman's announcements. I have one announcement to make about our academisation of the school. I'm delighted to report that following receipt of the Directed Academy Order for Five Islands School in November 2016, the long and complex legal process establishing the Five Islands Academy as part of the Leading Edge Academies partnership is on track for completion on the 1st of January. The process has been complex due to a change partway through of the Multi-Academy Trust, and also due to the number of tasks associated with conveyancing 11 properties or parcels of land. Throughout this process, the LA appointed interim executive board with leadership support from Mounts Bay Academy have relentlessly sought to raise standards across the school. This has been evidenced in particular by improved standards at the end of year 6, where average standardized scores and progress measures in reading, writing and maths are now on par with the national averages. Additionally, at Key Stage 4, a progress measure of 0.86 places in the school at the top of 14% of schools nationally. Also, 80% of the cohort achieved grade 5 or above in English and maths combined, compared with an England school's average of 39.9%. It is anticipated that continued partnership working across the member schools, the Multi-Academy Trust will provide the necessary supportive framework to ensure that the school keeps on reaping the reward of improved educational outcomes for children and young people of the islands. Thank you. Item 4 is questions under Standing Order 14. I have none. Item 5 is to consider reports from committees, including the receipt of minutes, draft minutes for information, pages 21 to 50. Are there any comments, please? No? Okay, happy to accept those, thank you. Item 6, to consider motions in accordance with Standing Order 12. I have none. Item 7 is member updates. Page 51. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. As members can see from my written report, there's some good news stories which have emanated both from Health and Wellbeing Board and Children's Trust, which took place in November. I'm particularly pleased around the progress around mental health, which has been funded through the Better Care Fund and intervention from a whole host of partners. We'll have a resident mental health professional starting very imminently and should be able to help improve the emotional and mental health of residents of Scilly. There's also been some positive news from within the sort of active Scilly branch of the council through funding received from Sport England. Almost £200,000 will be going towards encouraging children, young people and families who aren't participating that much in sport and healthy living opportunities to take part through a whole range of innovative schemes. That will also have benefits for our budget as we move forward as well, as funding can be rearranged. There's a briefing paper I can share with members which Nicola has put together, and I met with the project manager this morning who's also working on a press release. So hopefully that can be some good news which is shared across the community. Some positive work around SEN is developing through the programme board. And just some other aspects in there around boating. That's in its infancy. We've had one meeting. I can perhaps update more in due course. And there's some other aspects as well around Christmas through the Edward MacDonald Trust. And again, the Santa Fun Run, which is taking place this weekend, which members might wish to participate in.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any questions for Councillor Williams, please? Councillor Watt?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to commend the idea encased in the middle of that report from Joe Williams about the member of the Youth Parliament. I think that is brilliant. And any idea when that will take place?
I would certainly like it to be early in the new year. We've got a very articulate member of Youth Parliament at the moment. We've always had very articulate members of Youth Parliament. He's very keen. He comes to each of our children's trusts and talk about what he's been doing. And our last one, he'd just come back from the House of Commons where they've been debating various different aspects. He sort of spoke about knife crime as being something which they spoke about, as well as lowering the vote potentially I don't want to get too political. If we were to have a second referendum on things like Brexit, I'd love to see 16, 17-year-olds voting on that. That was something else which he was talking about. But I would certainly like maybe for January, February's meeting for him to be able to come and talk beforehand at our full council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Sims, was your question to
No.
Councillor Williams?
No.
Councillor Mumford?
Yes, I'd just like to comment or ask Councillor Williams, is the resident mental professional here now? Have they started? They have. I'm really pleased to see that.
Just done 2 weeks induction in Bodmin Hospital and starting on the islands on Monday. And I'm going to do a bit of a press release because I know there's been some interest so the community can get to know her.
I'd also like to convey my thanks to Keith Grossett because he's actually leaving that department. He was very helpful when I was lead member for children, and I'm sure all councillors would like to wish him well in his new post.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chairman. Just picking up briefly on the inter-island boating there. I don't know if you want to say any more, Councillor Williams, about that one. But,
Yeah, we had a discussion 2 or 3 weeks ago where various different members were present. Aisling is leading on that. We recognise that one of the big expenses for the authorities around boating, and people tend to be users of these boats, so it was sort of fitting into children and adult services quite neatly. The aspiration is to have perhaps more of a reliable scheduled service to cut down on the number of specials which go between Scilly. We were talking about the fact that it's easier in the summer, obviously, to travel by boat, so this needs to be considered as a 12-month option. The proposal was that Aisling, I think, was going to talk to some of the boating providers, and I think more information will flow out of those conversations as we go into the new year. I don't know if Aisling's got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, and just to say, this was actually an action that actually came out of scrutiny at one point, and I think it's a very positive action for the community. So looking forward to the outcomes.
Thank you. Councillor Barclay.
Thank you, Chairman. On that subject of inter-island boating, I hope we are not just going to consider the financial aspects of it, because at a recent island meeting, it became apparent that the Briar parents, some of whom felt and in fact reported that the children, because of cancellations to boats during poor weather, were not meeting the legal requirements for the time of education. And that has got to be addressed.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, do you want to respond?
I can certainly confirm that the sort of social value of inter-island boating is highly recognised. I wouldn't like to comment on the legal aspects of the point you raised without having further information, but I can certainly reassure that the social action, social interaction of off-islanders was part of those conversations we've had already, and I've got no doubt it will be as we go forward as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Sims.
A very brief update for me on place. Dry waste recycling has started. I've talked a very brief conversation with a couple of the operatives at the coalface, and they seem quite happy with it. It seems to be going very well. But one of the message I got from them was, please, could people make sure they seal their recycling bags properly, because if they get wet, they turn into black waste straight away. So it's very important to emphasise the dry. They need to seal their bags properly, possibly put something over the top of it. Because certainly with the weather we've had recently, I imagine that quite a lot of the dry waste recycling has ceased to be dry.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to start by supporting the good wishes and thanks sent to Keith Grossett. Through November, with the chair and other colleagues, the community meetings, the biannual community meetings were held all over the islands, and we had a good exchange of views. I've also attended 2 meetings of the Health and Social Care Integration Board, which were actually held on the islands now every month, and a paper is to come to this meeting. The project is progressing well, with more engagement planned for the spring. I've also attended the local enterprise board meeting on the 28th of November in St Austell, where the main focus was on a presentation and update of on Brexit, which has somewhat been overtaken by recent events. I've also taken the opportunity while I was on the mainland, with the sanction of our lead member of adults, to meet with the Cornwall councillor in that role, and we have reissued an invite to him to visit the islands, and I believe Ashlyn has now confirmed with him that he would be happy to visit us in February, which will be very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other member updates, please? Councillor Barclay.
Chairman, I know that Smart Islands is going to feature a lot on this agenda, but I would just like to add that I've attended 2 conferences in London, and one was on social innovations held by Hitachi, and the other one, at which I was invited to speak, covered fuel poverty. And in spite of having a cold that made me lose my voice almost entirely, I did manage to do a presentation on that for the islands.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 8, which is urgent items, which I have none. Item 9 is the planning application P18051. I'll hand over to Lisa Walton. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got an application for a change of use of an area of land on Tinkler's Hill at Lower Town on St Martin's for seasonal glamping. The construction of 6 areas of permanent decking, which are around 6 metres by 6 metres. The development will form part of the tourism accommodation offer on the Karma St Martin's Hotel. During the summer months, the area of decking will be used for glamping with a tent and a bathroom pod situated on each decked area. During the winter, these will be stored away. Water for bathrooms will be provided by 175 litre water tanks, and bottled water will be provided for drinking. The water will be obtained from the hotel's private borehole supply. Foul water will be removed through the removal of portable toilets and disposed of via the hotel's biodisc treatment plant located to the north side of the hotel. Non-foul water waste will be disposed of via soakaway. Power for each of the tents will be provided through solar panels sited on each of the bathroom pods, and the tents will be otherwise self-sufficient. The removal of wastewater and the provision of water will be manually provided and removed from the site, and the applicants have advised the details of this will be set out as part of an operational management plan, which they have indicated will be post-decision but pre-commencement. Landscaping around each of the decked areas will be managed and maintained to ensure the site remains screened in the wider landscape as much as possible. Outside of the decking and a small path to access each of the 6 decked areas, no other development is proposed at the site. As you'll note from the report, this application has been finely balanced, and whilst there is strong concerns from the community on a number of issues, it is considered that the harm identified to the natural and historic environment on this part of St Martin's has not been offset by any demonstrable wider public benefits. The site is an undeveloped and unenclosed heathland, and the proposal will result in the encroachment into this landscape in close proximity to a number of historic environment designations, and it is on this impact that the proposal is recommended for refusal. Members are asked to note that the applicant has offered to install interpretation boards as part of the proposal to highlight the importance and sensitive nature of the landscape, and have stated that the land within their control will be managed in terms of scrub clearance where required. Officers are not convinced that this will be sufficient to provide the public benefits to offset the harm identified, particularly as much of the landscape to the east is outside of their control. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. I'll just go through the slides. So it's to the east of the hotel. It's a topographical survey that the applicants have done, and that's the layout of the 6 decked areas with the tents and the bathroom pods. That's a section from the hotel through the site, and that's the other way, the lower pods. That's elevation plan of the bathroom pod, and they're the portable toilets that will be in there. They're the tent specifications. And there's some views from when members did a site visit last month, looking back to Tinkler's Hill. And the path leading up to the site, this track. And this is not very clear in here, but this is from within the site itself.
Thank you, Lisa. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was really helpful to go on a site visit, so thanks, Lisa, for sorting that out. And this was quite a tricky decision, really. It's quite finely balanced, but on balance with the weight of representation from local residents as well, I think that I have to go down in favour in supporting the officer's decision to refuse the application. There is too much land outside of the control of the applicant in order to minimise the impact to the historic environment and the natural environment. And it's really important that we give weight to that environment, because that is the main selling ticket of the islands. So with regards to all of that, then I propose a recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've been asked by a couple of residents from St Martin's to ask this question. Is the treatment plant in full operation? Are we aware?
I don't know at the present time whether it is operational. There have been issues this year where it has been inoperational and required fixing, and their solution was to use it as a septic tank in the interim until it was fixed.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford.
Yes, I also went on the site visit, and it was quite interesting. I was unhappy about one of the, sorry, what do you call them? Tents? Pods? Tent pods, whatever they're called. One was very near the first one up there is very near the path where people are walking. The others were actually quite hidden. But I was also worried about the emptying of the toilets, because they're going to have to carry them quite some way down to the back of the hotel, where they're emptied. And there's a lot of objections to this, so I would agree, and I would like to second the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. As you can imagine, there was much interest in this application on the island. This is a pretty significant development with 24 bed spaces. So I think we must view it in that light. I certainly applaud efforts to extend the season and to offer different or novel types of accommodation. This is a very, very long and detailed planning application. I have to say there's an awful lot of pages, but there's an awful lot of unanswered questions as well, particularly around water provision, access, electricity provision, landscaping. And I think there's some really quite serious concerns around landscape impact. Sewage disposal and current capacity, as Councillor Guy pointed out, I think does have some serious question marks. Noise, traffic, I mean, actually I'd take issue with paragraph 83. I think it does. I think it is quite a serious island issue around increasing traffic. An extra 24 people staying there potentially could lead to quite an increase. As has been pointed out by Councillor Marcus and Councillor Mumford, there's been a lot of local representation making a lot of very valid planning points. So with consideration of all the points, I would also support the proposal to refuse the application.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
I think there are a number of reasons to support the officer's recommendation, but my principal one is it's a wholly undeveloped area of the island, and I don't think it's a positive usage of the existing land.
Thank you. Right, we have a recommendation that members refuse the application for the following reason. The proposed change use of land and erection of 6 decked areas for seasonal glamping would give rise to the historic environment by virtue of encroaching development on the unenclosed heathland, where there are records of ancient habitation that are important to the historic and cultural development of St Martin's, and B, the tranquility of the natural environment, which is designated an area of outstanding natural beauty, by introducing activities into an elevated and undeveloped part of St Martin's. The environmental harm identified is not offset by any demonstrable wider public benefit. The proposal is therefore contrary to the requirements of Policy 1A and Policy 2A of the adopted Isles of Scilly Local Plan 2005 and paragraphs 172 and 196 of the National Planning Policy Framework 2018. Can I have a proposer, please, with regard to the recommendation for refusal? Right, then can I have the vote, please? All those in favour of refusing the application? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you. Right. Item 10 on our agenda is the update of the local plan preparation timetable, page 81. Again, a report from our senior officer, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a report to members on the current progress and timetable for progressing the adoption of the new local plan, as well as to agree the adoption of the revised timetable. The report notes some general slippage due to dealing with planning applications and time taken to address some of the consultation responses in terms of the evidence base. Officers have made amendments to the plan following the consultation process, and we are now looking to report back to members in January with the finalised draft plan with a view to carrying out public consultation ahead of the submission. Work remains in budget, and we are unsure we can move through to submission and examination as timetabled in the timetable as appended.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all members for turning up to the local plan working group meetings. I think we're nearly there in terms of getting it ready for publication in January. So keep a lookout for your emails for the updates to the policies. It's going to be exciting stuff. So yeah, I'd like to propose a recommendation, please.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Mumford. Thank you. All those in favour of accepting the recommendation that the revised local plan preparation timetable LDS7 is approved? Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Yes. I'm now going to move agenda item 14 as our next item. Will now be item 11, and the rest of the items will move down in order. So I'd like to hand over, please, welcome Russell, and hand over to our 151 officer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the annual statements of accounts for 2017-18 that come to full council for approval on an annual basis. We've had a training session earlier today, so hopefully some of the detailed questions will have been answered through that process. And obviously Mike Harris, the Deputy 151, has offered members to come and talk to him in more detail at a date in the future if they have concerns or more understanding of the actual detailed statements that are actually attached to this report. In general, though, I think I can say is that these accounts are a much improved set of accounts that we've had in previous years. There is probably one minor unadjusted misstatement that was identified, and that was very small. It was only just on the limit of being reported anyway, and there was one significant disclosure note that had to be added. That was the only changes from the draft accounts that we submitted for audit. So I think we can say that we're getting a much improved quality of statutory accounts from what the council had a couple of years ago. So better quality, and I think we're in a better place. The actual outturn position is quite similar to what we reported in July in the draft outturn. We reported an underspend there of 109, and although the statutory accounts show an overspend of 197, 284,000 was the planned overspend at the beginning of the year to be funded from reserves. So if you take the two away, you'll find that we're quite similar to the outturn that we had in July, which measures our performance against our original plan. So we were very close to, we were 109 under our plan, although we still slightly overspent at the end of the year. Also included in this report is the annual governance statement. And as set out in a previous report in the summer, we now have changed the format of the annual governance statement to follow the standard SIPFA framework. The report is attached in the pack. I think generally, again, on the AGS, we're beginning to find that the financial control environment is improving. We're getting better. It's becoming more stable, but there is still a significant amount of improvement needed, which I think the external auditors will touch on in a minute, in terms of the non-financial performance and non-financial risk management of the authority. So, as I have stated in previous meetings, the focus in the last couple of years has been getting the accounts in a better position, getting the financial affairs of the authority under control, the control environment around finance being strengthened, but there is also more work to be done over the general governance framework of the authority in terms of having regular reporting on performance and risk on non-financial elements. As you're aware, we now do the quarterly financial reports where we try and pick up the risks and the performance to date across a significant number of the financial indicators of the authority, but say we need to start, the authority needs to start looking at the non-financial risk and performance really to start making better inroads into having a stronger annual governance statement. I will hand over to the external auditor in a minute. You will see in her report that we will have a unqualified opinion on our statement of accounts, i.e. the historic accounts for 2017-18, but there is still going to be a qualified opinion on our value for money going forward. I'll leave the external auditor to explain why, but some of that is linked to what I just said in the AGS. It's about future planning, the robustness of our core corporate plan and a full medium-term financial plan that matches that corporate plan, and then how that plan is then monitored on a regular basis, including performance and risk. So it is all intertwined. There is a linkage through there. I don't think it was a surprise that the VFM the value for money outcome wouldn't be qualified, because as I say, I just mentioned the focus has been getting the financial control environment solid and in place at the moment. I think I'll stop there and then hand over to Jerry of the external auditor for her opinion on the financial state of the authority.
Thank you, Russell, but I just want to know if there's any questions for Russell before we hand over. No, thank you. I'd like to hand over to Geraldine Daly from Grant Thornton then. Thank you, Geraldine.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me again this morning to present to you the audit findings report for 17-18. I'll take on board some of the comments actually that Russell's just made, in that this is the third year now where we're reporting a qualified value for money conclusion. But I'm not going to spoil the positive message in terms of the quality of the financial statements in 17-18 with that conclusion, because I'll come to that later. So I think from where I'm sitting today, in terms of the quality of your financial statements, I agree with your Section 151 officer that it is very, very much improved. As you recall, in 2015-16, we had to undertake some significant work with your then previous Section 151 officer who was brought in to try and improve the accuracy of those accounts. And there were a number of amendments to those accounts which saw your general fund reserve go down to £500,000. That was a pretty dismal message to have to share with you at the time, but to share with you, I had to do that. So I think today it's probably worth congratulating the finance team on the provision of what I consider to be a really good quality set of financial statements for 17-18. That doesn't mean you were let off the hook as auditors. Given the previous couple of years' errors that we found, we have scrutinised these 17-18 accounts, as you can well imagine, and have undertaken significant amount of testing to be able to say to you today that I am confident once everything's resolved today and signed off, we will be issuing an unqualified opinion on your 17-18 accounts. So I'd like to take that on record, please, Chair, because things have changed significantly over the last 2 years. So can I take you then to some of the detail of my report, please, starting on my page 3, headlines. Sorry, I think it's your page 275, apologies. The headline messages are, as I've just mentioned, and at the time of writing this report last week, there were a number of items that was outstanding in terms of your 17-18 accounts, and they're detailed on the right-hand column. Before I get to them, to explain to you the progress made against those outstanding items, we still have to sign off 16-17 accounts. We've been waiting for some information over the past few months on those accounts, particularly around solicitors' letters to guarantee to me that there are no outstanding litigations, signed letter of representation, which is part of your signature process later today. And that letter of representation is absolutely crucial for the auditor, because it comes from yourselves, it comes from the chair, saying that there are no items that we don't know about, that you haven't shared with me over the course of the last year and a half. And also some representation also around any frauds as well, because as we audit your accounts, yes, we have an eye open for things like that, but of course, only yourselves will know if things have taken place, and you need to declare that to me. So those are the items that I'm waiting for in 16-17, and once I've got those, I will be signing the opinion for 16-17. In terms of 17-18 then, just to take you through some of the items, we have obtained the final version of your financial statements, and they are on your agenda, they are in your pack. We've reviewed and the revised annual governance statement, because there were revisions to your AGS, and that does need to be signed as well today. We've updated at what we call our post-balance sheet event. So obviously your balance sheet is dated the 31st of March 2018. We're now in December, so things have changed over those months, and we just need to double check if anything so significant has changed that it would impact on those figures. And all of the outstanding testing has now been completed as well. So I think can positively say that we should be signing the opinion before Christmas on 17-18. And if you look back over the last couple of years, that's no mean feat. That means we'll have signed 3 opinions in 1 year. And hopefully will now mean that from 18-19, the Isles of Scilly will be on track as per the government timetable. In terms of value for money, and specifically on looking at your arrangements in place to achieve value for money, it is an adverse qualified opinion, as it has been in the last 2 years. And that is largely around what your Section 151 officer has just explained, the robustness of your medium-term financial plan, the fact that there are still savings gaps that do need to be underpinned by some substantial savings plans, and indeed that the transparency of performance reporting does need to be improved. And I'll take you back to 2015-16, when we issued or used one of our statutory powers, which was issuing the Isles of Scilly with some statutory recommendations. They're called Section 24, and that goes to the Secretary of State as well. There are still some outstanding items in relation to those recommendations that I would now urge the Council 2 years on to implement. It's been 2 years since those recommendations have been made, and because they are not as embedded as we would expect them to be, and I appreciate some of these things do take time, that is why you're also getting an adverse value for money conclusion, and that's why it's been qualified again this year. So I'm happy to take you through some of the detail. If you go over to page 276, that just outlines materiality level, you know, the error rate that we allow accounts to have. And that was set at 166,000. And over the next few pages, you'll recall in terms of our 17-18 audit plan, we identified some areas that we wanted to place particular focus on when we came to do some testing. One item was your going concern, and indeed our focus on that was to request from your Section 151 officer an analysis, a detailed analysis of why he believes, as of today, you are a going concern for the next 12 months, because my opinion when I sign it in December relates to the next 12 months, not just the previous year. And I have to conclude whether I feel satisfied by your Section 151 officer's document, whether you are a going concern or not. So we've done a lot of work on that particular area. I can see that the going concern statement is also in your packs, and hopefully you will have had a chance to see what your Section 151 officer is saying about the going concern concept. And just moving over the page, looking at things like what we call management of overrider controls, that's just testing your journals, that's testing your IT system. And then from page 279 onwards, focusing on some of the really, really big numbers in your accounts. Mike presented those big numbers to you earlier today, particularly those on your balance sheet, the valuation of your property, for instance, and also that big valuation of your pension fund liability. Some of the other pages talk about the other areas on focus of our attention in terms of testing. So that's on page 281, how much you spend paying the employees of the council and how much you spend on paying suppliers, etc., your operating expenses. And there are no particular issues across all of those headings and areas that we do need to bring to your attention. There's one unadjusted item, and that's unadjusted because it is clearly not material at all. And without going back into 2015-16, but just to share that as an example, in 2015-16, I was reporting amendments in every single section of this report. So I think, again, it's a positive message in terms of there are no significant changes to your accounts. We also need to review to see how reasonable your accounting policies are. So if you turn to page 282, you will see that we still suggest improvements to your revenue recognition policy, and that's largely around how you account for grants. In 2015-16, there were a significant number of amendments because of your grants. There aren't any this year, but we still feel that that policy needs to be a little clearer on how you would account for it, so that everybody who is in receipt of a grant or knows of a grant knows how to account for that properly. In terms of judgments and estimates, these are some of the things that auditors do focus on, because there's a huge amount of uncertainty when you come around to estimating items. And we do check the methodology that you yourself, the Isles of Scilly, would have used in some of those big significant items. Now, the reason why one of those is amber is because at the time of writing this, we were still waiting for 4 solicitors' responses. And I think I mentioned in my introduction that we write to solicitors because we want to understand if there are any outstanding litigations that us as auditors don't know about, and that's the only way we can really understand that by contacting them. So 3 of those have come in now, and those are 3 of the big ones, as well as from your Section 151 officer information about an outstanding case that was settled in August of this year. So I'm happy actually that that can now be turned green. I'm more than happy to stop there, Chair, in terms of the presentation on the financial statements before I then go into the responses to my statutory recommendations 2 years ago and the value for money conclusion. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions, please?
Sorry,
Councillor Marcus.
Clarification on that, on page 282, that first bullet point on revenue recognition, what does that actually mean? I don't understand.
What does revenue recognition?
No, sorry, just that first bullet
Oh,
point
sorry.
there.
Revenue from the sale of goods is recognised. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's about. There are some rules in terms of SIT for code that on how you should account for your receipt of revenue. And it's when you transfer the risks and rewards of that transaction. So it's not to recognise it too early, for instance, that you should only recognise it when you actually have that revenue in your hand.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, please? Okay, Councillor Grottig.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask, with reference to page 283, where you say number 7, significant difficulties, and let me just say it's very pleasing to have had, you know, the much better progress noted, which we're all really pleased about. So thank you very much for that, and thank you to all our supporting officers that have helped us get where we are today. But you note you had some issues experienced by officers and auditors in trying to identify supporting evidence for transactions on the island. Do you feel have you any thoughts on whether or not, because we're now cooperating with Cornwall, there might be issues that we as a council should be addressing that now, in order to improve the finance resource that we actually have based here on the island? Do you think I could ask you to comment on that if you think it's appropriate?
I'll comment on the issue in particular, and that was trying to find hard copies of documents as part of our testing. And I think that's largely due to the fact that you had a change in IT system and general ledger system during the year. So in effect, what we were doing was auditing you twice and trying to find information that had moved on subsequently as a result of that transition. But I think Russell wants to come in on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, I think you more or less covered what I was going to say. I think the issues were probably there for this year and this year alone because we didn't change financial systems on the 1st of March. Going forward, we have a much better process in place for the storage of the documents, and we shouldn't have this issue going forward. But going backwards, because of that cutover between financial systems, having to try and locate all the documents on the island was a bit more challenging, particularly as a number of the staff that were involved in managing those records had since moved on as well. But I think I can clearly give member assurance that going forward, we should now have solved that with the change over to the financial system and the new processes in place.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Then we have recommendations. We have 5 of them. Sorry. Excuse me. Sorry.
So can I ask you to turn to page 285, please? So this is an update for members I hope you'll find useful on the recommendations made under our section 24 powers to the council a couple of years ago. What I've tried to do here is show you the progress and in particular highlight any outstanding items that I specifically think do need now to be addressed in 2018-19. And I appreciate you haven't got very long to do that, but it's around about the short term now and focusing on what may need to be done. In particular, around the medium-term financial planning. So I appreciate and recognise that you are now in the process of reviewing and revamping that, and that's exactly what you need to do for the next 4 years. So I would encourage the council to undertake that exercise and complete it, to make sure that that medium-term financial plan is robust and has supporting savings plans underlying those assumptions. And indeed, that in future there is some clear transparency in terms of reporting the progress against that, not just on an annual basis, but also looking at your medium term. And I guess linked to that is your savings plans and the fact that the council now need to identify further savings in order to avoid any shortfall in future years. And I guess a comment made as in to rely upon reserves isn't sustainable for the future. So we've seen your reserves increase over the last 2 years, and then we've seen them start to decrease again this year. So, you know, just in terms of a reality check that using reserves isn't sustainable over the medium term because they are reserves and they don't last forever. We've noted actually that the strategic collaboration with Cornwall Council has helped increase capacity and skills. As you recall, 2 years ago, we did raise recommendations around increasing capacity in the finance department. However, I do think there are still some capacity issues that I appreciate the councils continue to address. And I know that that is on your radar, so therefore that recommendation does still stand. And finally, I've mentioned reserves again. It's highlighted there, the use of reserves not being sustainable over the medium term, and to remind the council, and I appreciate you don't need reminding, but just to reinforce that recommendation around the level of reserves. So before I go on to the value for money conclusion, which, as I said earlier, is very, very closely linked to those recommendations, I'm more than happy to take any questions on those.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the comment on the medium-term financial plan is kind of very useful and worthwhile, and a good observation that we're sort of focusing a bit too much on the here and now at the minute. I just had a question there around the savings plans. As you've highlighted, we've got a shortfall on our 215 savings by around 80,000. Just like a comment from you really around whether you find that surprising, or is that kind of commonplace in local authorities?
It's very common. It's very common in local authorities where they are revising their medium-term financial plan on a regular basis. I think it's fair to say, you know, local government is very challenged at the moment financially. We all know that. That's been well rehearsed. So it is very unusual, actually, for a council not to have a gap that they need to fill. And I appreciate that it's always a moment in time. So, you know, I wrote this 10 days ago. That gap may have moved on by now, but it is very much a moment in time.
Thank you, Russell. Yeah, just a comment on this. Don't disagree with the statements per se, as they say, is at a point in time. I think I can give members assurance that I've got confidence that we will be addressing a lot of this in the next couple of months, and hopefully we'll be in a stronger position next year. We have identified the shortfall on the savings, and we have rolled that forward, what the impact is over the medium term, and how we and we will be looking in the next month about what the proposals are to fill those gaps, etc. So I think we will have a more robust MTFP in place and a more robust position going forward, and we will be reviewing the reserves again and ensuring that we are in a strong position. So yes, it is where we are now. I'm hopeful that the work that we've got planned over the next 2 months will address a lot of this. Thank you. Councillor Sims.
I know this may sound like a trivial thing, but it's not, I don't think. This year is the first year for quite a long time we haven't heard the word caveat once. And I certainly remember when Andy reporting to us last year, basically he said caveat almost as often as he said the. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions for Geraldine on this?
If I just carry on then to go through the value for money conclusion. As I say, it's very closely linked to what we've just talked about, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. The detail is there on page, 287, 288, 289 and 290. And ultimately what that leads us to is a qualified value for money conclusion. And you'll see the recommendations on page 287 on the right-hand side, which supports the reasoning behind that conclusion. So in picking up, say, some of the key messages on page 288 onwards, it's around financial sustainability, what I've just said, your medium-term financial planning, the reporting of savings targets, transparency around performance reporting, etc., leading on to financial governance and in particular internal control. And indeed, actually, on item number 3, partnership working, that actually we have concluded there are good arrangements in place for that. So it's just those previous 2. And finally, just to confirm that myself as your auditor and the team remained independent throughout the year. As you've probably heard in the media, there is stringent controls on auditors in terms of ethics and independence. And if at any time we don't feel independent, we have to declare it. And we didn't have to declare anything during the course of your audit, the audit of the Isles of Scilly. And finally, if I just take you through to our fees, which we do have to report to you as the council and those charged with governance, our fees are on page 299. And because there has been such a significant amount of work on your financial statements since 2015-16, I wanted to be as transparent as possible. So I've put the 3 years in there, not just 1, so you can see exactly what your fee was proposed by PSAA, who regulates you and us in terms of the audit work we do, and the final fee that has either been billed or proposed to be billed. So I'm happy to stop there and take any questions on value for money, the fees, the independence, or the action plan.
Thank you, Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Geraldine, it's just value for money. Just seems a little concerning on overall conclusion. A weakness in the budgetary control, a lack of robust medium financial plan, an uncertainty over the financial challenge, and the lack of non-financial performance. Just seems a little concerning to read that.
Yeah, I agree. And I took the decision to probably use some quite robust wording this year because of what I've just said. You know, we issued Section 24 recommendations 2 years ago. I accept that things are progressing. I do. However, there are still some items that are outstanding, and I wanted to get the message across to members that, you know, these things probably do need to really start to become embedded now across the Isles of Scilly. And that is why you have an adverse qualified value for money conclusion. And without making members or the council feel absolutely awful about this, that is actually quite a rare conclusion. There are not many councils that get this. I appreciate that that is going up. Those numbers are going up. So I wanted to make sure that that message got across, and apologies for the tone, perhaps.
No, I'd like to thank you for the way you've written it. I think it'll wake us up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. My interpretation is you're saying that your patience is now wearing thin and we've got to respond to this, pull our socks up very, very quickly. So I was just going to ask Russell whether it would be appropriate to have a report brought to a meeting early in the new year, perhaps setting out your plan, our options, a route forward, so that we're not in the same position in 12 months' time, that we can then performance manage to make sure that we're able to respond to the challenges which are before us.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I would endorse that also. Russell?
Yeah, I'll take on board that request, but I'll need to work obviously with the senior officers and the chief executive on that, because not all the issues are financial. It's about there's quite a big element of non-financial performance and risk that needs to be assessed and a piece of work done there. But I'll take on the board and work with the chief executive to bring you back a report in the new year about how we are dealing with this. A lot of it you'll actually see on the financial position unfold over the next 2 months as we go through the budget setting process. We've got an event next week which will help start to send us in the right direction and get a feeling of what our NTFP will look like. But yeah, I'm quite comfortable to come back with that report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will also depend on getting the corporate plan done, which will then sort the MTFP out. So I'd encourage members to get involved in that when that starts up again, just to make sure that we bottom that out and get that sorted. So some of this is within our grasp as well. It's not just officers, it's about members being active and taking part in it. Thank you very much for highlighting the fees, Geraldine. They're quite a lot more than the estimates are. So it does feel a bit like being in an overdraft and getting charged for being in that overdraft. What are the fees looking like for this year? And are we going to see a reduction going forward?
So thank you, Chair, thank you, Councillor. Yes, that's why I wanted to share these with you. I have to be transparent when we bill clients, yourselves, extra. These aren't figures that Grant Thornton wanted to necessarily bill. We didn't have an option. That might sound strange coming from a finance firm. However, to reassure you, in terms of their accuracy, these are checked and double checked by PSAA. We aren't allowed to just invoice the council without those double checks, and so they did support those extra billing. So this year, I've mentioned to you this year that I think the quality of the accounts is way better than it's been in the last few years, and therefore you'd probably be looking at the region of between 4,000 and 5,000 as extra. And that will still need to be discussed with your Section 151 officer. So I'm hoping we are now moving away from extra fees in the 20s and 30s and 60s.
Thank you. Any further questions for Geraldine? Thank you. Do you have anything more to say, or can I deal with the recommendations now? Okay, thank you. So we have 5 recommendations. I intend to take them all together unless anyone has issue with that. Number 1 is that the statement of accounts for 2017-18 for the Council of the Isles of Scilly is approved. Number 2, that the annual governance statement for 2017-18 is approved for signing by the Chief Executive and the Chairman of the Council. 3, that Grant Thornton's audit findings report for the Council of the Isles of Scilly for 2017-18 is noted, and the management actions proposed in response to its recommendations are endorsed. Number 4, the letter of management representation for the Council of the Isles of Scilly is approved for signing by the Section 151 officer. And lastly, number 5, the going concern statement signed by the Council's Section 151 officer is noted. But I have a proposer, please. Councillor Molson, seconder Councillor Sims. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to give my personal thanks to you and to Russell for all the work that you've done. It's very clear that that although we're much improved, we have a lot to do. And as Councillor Williams mentioned just now, we will get stuck into that in the new year and make sure that we work out a way of delivering what's required of this council. Thank you. So we move on, please, to now item number 12, which is the budget monitoring, again, report of our 151 officer. Sorry. No, we changed so it's item 12, thank you. Russell, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Set out here is the budget monitoring report as at the 31st of October. This is the light touch report that we bring you in between the more significant quarterly reports that we now have implemented. This light touch report suggests that the forecast underspend or against our target budget for the year is in the region of £46,000 at the moment. This compares with the forecast at the end of September, where we were predicting £49,000 underspend. So overall bottom line, there is little or no change since the second quarter report. There was one more significant variation which we've set out in the service commentary, and we've now paired the service commentary back for these light touch reports just to cover the changes since the last report, but we will have the fuller service commentary on those main quarterly reports. £30,000 increase in spending in the water and sewerage service will fund that by reducing the amount of money that was going to be transferred to reserve from this service, so it won't have an impact on the overall bottom line of the authority. So generally, the Light Touch report for October says that we're pretty much in line with what we reported at the end of the second quarter. Further work is ongoing in a couple of more detailed areas. I think those are the areas we picked up at the last report, particularly around some of the issues around fire and the fire service in the airport. But we'll be picking those up and getting those back in the next quarter report.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just some comments from last time. I think it's quite difficult to follow the trends given the recent environments. So from my point of view, it's a little bit of a frustration, but it should get better over time. I think we have to take some encouragement from the bottom line. So that's certainly a positive there. And just to reiterate some comments from last time regarding commentary, whether that could be, you said they were going to be quarterly, but it could be a bit more detailed, please, so we can really follow that better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Russell, please? Okay, we have a recommendation that members note the budget monitoring report as at the 31st of October 2018.
I'll propose that, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Molson seconding. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Any against? It's unanimous. Thank you. So item 13 now is the capital programme for the financial year 2018-2019, page 101. Again, report of 151, Officer Russell. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation there, when we get to, I'll give a brief intro to the report, but the recommendation will need a slight change for the fact that the order of the agenda has got Smart Islands after this report, and Smart Islands is part of this. So the monitoring officer will give you an updated recommendation just to take into account that these originally were on the agenda for last meeting when the order was the other way around, and it worked. They've been switched for this one, so we just need to tweak the recommendation. But generally, this is a one-year capital programme, and I've mentioned in previous reports that having reviewed the capital programme and various reports referring to capital projects over the last two and a half years, I decided it would probably be sensible to bring a consolidated report setting out the capital programme to ensure that we have a sort of an explicit, consolidated, approved programme that we can monitor against and go forward from. It's not saying that there are items of expenditure that have been incurred where there wasn't approval. It's just bringing it all forward into one document which was explicit so that we've got it in one place. If you go back over the last two and a half years, it is a little bit difficult sometimes to actually find a really clear, explicit audit trail of some of the recommendations. So this brings it all into one place. It's a one-year programme, 18-19 only. We're going to have a 3-year programme, 19-20 onwards, which we're going to set as part of the budget setting process and the MTFP going forward. You've seen that in packs that have been sent out to you for training next week. So we are moving forward and we'll have a more extensive capital programme. This is just to get us in a position where we have a very explicit approved capital programme for the current year. I will point out, as we're obviously well into the financial year, quite a considerable element of the capital programme is already spent on these items. But I think this is a bit of housekeeping to ensure that we've got a record of what our capital programme is. And say if you go back over the last couple of years, the approvals are probably there. It's just not being consolidated into a formal capital programme report. This is an attempt to do that. The programme is there. Some of the members were present at a workshop that we had where we went through some of the schemes in detail. We tried to reflect that commentary in section 4 where we've given a better description of the schemes. Hopefully that members will find that useful and have a better understanding of the schemes. As I said, the programme includes the Smart Islands expenditure. It may well be that we change the recommendation, as I said, just to hold those out or be subject to the approval of the Smart Islands report later on. I think there I'll hand over to any questions.
Councillor Molson.
Just one, on the table on page 103, the bottom line is school condition grant. Is the academisation that was announced today effect on that?
No, the local authority continues to hold that fund, and the schools within the local authority area make applications for use of that grant. So yeah, currently we have one school, so they'll make applications using a short business case templates, and then we will then port that money to the academy.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick point with regard to page 102, the Garrison Play Park. I wonder if we could just add a little bit to the description where it says proposed scheme to replace the equipment. The scheme will only commence if external funding is secured. I wonder if we might consider also adding, and consideration is given to the ongoing costs, because I think this is another situation where even if we get grant to replace the equipment, the ongoing maintenance is such an exposed location, and the health and safety implications, which are becoming ever more onerous, do merit, I think, further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think that's the proposal is to do an options appraisal about what we do in the future. And just to explain, we have revenue budget each year to support the replacement of parts ongoing. As you remember, the local authority took over the management of the facility on behalf of the community quite a few years ago. And the issue is that the supplier of those parts no longer exists. So we cannot do a rolling programme of repair. The Edward Addison Trust very kindly gave some money towards that refurbishment on an annual basis, but now that's no longer a solution. So we need to do an options appraisal about what happens next, and we'll need to consult, obviously, with users about what the potential is, not just for the capital investment, but ongoing revenue.
Thank you. Councillor Roger.
Question to the 151 officer. We've just been warned by our auditor that dipping into our reserves is not a good thing going forward, yet we are dipping in again in paragraph 6, 208,723. Do we have a comment on that?
Yeah, I can. This isn't dipping into the general reserve, which is held to support the council in general. This is using specific reserves that have been specifically set aside for the use that we're using them. So it's money that has come into the council, or reserves that have been set aside for this capital expenditure.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Listening to what you're saying in terms of bringing all this together in a document as the capital programme, I accept that some of these decisions have already been made. I think what would be good for transparency going forward is actually to be able to link back to when decisions were made, so that we can see some transparency, I think, in terms of what we've voted through or not so far. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll leave the recommendation at the current time and move on to agenda item 14, and I'll come back to this. No? Excuse me. Matt?
No, Chair. I've got an amendment to the recommendation, which I'll read out.
Right.
Which, if voted upon, still covers the order of business.
So you'll read out the recommendation, will you?
So the recommendation as written, and add to the end, but in relation to the electric vehicle car share project and the business energy efficiency project, the approval is subject to the determination of those matters under item 13 relating to smart islands. And so if you come to a contrary decision then on those two items under smart islands, they come out.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, I'll try. And I'll try and get it the same. But in relation to, so the recommendation as written, plus at the end, but in relation to the electric vehicle car share project and the business energy efficiency project, the approval is subject to the determination of those matters under item 13 relating to smart islands.
So if we approve, they get added in. If we reject them, they don't make a difference.
They come back out.
Yeah. Okay. I propose that recommendation.
Thank you. And Councillor Molson seconding. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you. That's carried unanimous. We'll move on to item 14, the Smart Islands update, which is the report of our senior manager, Nicola Stenson. Thank you, Nicola.
Okay, so for clarity, it's agenda item 13 and it's on page 107 of the main pack. Okay, members, thank you, Chairman. This is an update on the Smart Islands programme, and it's a point in time, I think Geraldine used that term as well, where it's a good opportunity to consolidate the work that's been undertaken so far in relation to the programme and also look forward to the next stages. It provides, I hope, a comprehensive summary of the programme on a project-by-project basis and gives some clarity over the decisions made to date. It sets out where further reports will be required in the future. It's a useful baseline summary, and members will note the appendices and background papers that have been circulated with the report itself. For me, it's been really helpful in a way to look back at where this all started. And if we go back to the Memorandum of Understanding back in 2015, one of the challenges I set myself in looking at this report was, are the issues that were identified in 2015 still relevant today? So yes, in terms of fuel poverty, we're still one of the highest ranked in the UK. We've got highest in the UK in relation to fuel poverty. We're still highest rate of electricity use in the UK. We've got high potential for the use of renewables on the island and still a relatively low take-up. We have a high cost of waste disposal and the sewage system still needs updating. We've seen increased vehicle usage that's been reflected in the destination management plan from the Islands Partnership. And there's also a challenge in terms of developing new skills and opportunities for our young people. So I think the aims of the Memorandum of Understanding and its objectives remain the same today. The main aims were to reduce electricity bills, so for residents and businesses, commercial premises, it's still important to us. And increased renewable energy generation forms part of that solution alongside energy efficiency. The opportunity to use electric vehicles, both as transport and as stores for electric power, are still a challenge, and this gives an opportunity on the islands through partnership to set a way forward for the island's future. So what's been achieved to date? I think it was useful looking at what the Smart Energy Islands project has done so far. So that project was led by Hitachi and it had a number of different elements to it. And you'll have seen the new energy photovoltaic panels on our own homes, our social homes, and on our commercial sites too. We've also seen Hitachi develop a smart energy grid, a platform by which energy can be shared around the islands, maintaining the maximum amount of renewable energy for use by residents here on the islands itself. The community venture has been established in its first year and set up an Isles of Scilly energy tariff so that those people who haven't got photovoltaics on their roof or energy efficiency measures can benefit from cheaper electricity. This idea of social innovation and sharing of benefits throughout the community has been achieved. We've also had some interesting work done with businesses around their energy efficiency, and many reports have been produced with over 170 businesses visited, identifying opportunities both for energy efficiency and renewables on their properties. So that's the actual project, but I think what's more important is the reputational value that that's now given us. So we featured as a case study in the government's National Industrial Strategy. We've had interest for other innovators and projects such as Wavetricity and Smart Water Scilly, and we've put Scilly on the map nationally. This enhanced reputation as a place for innovation and technology is an important factor as we move forward. It's a means of delivering both the destination management plan and the local plan that we have already adopted by the local plan that's up for adoption shortly. So the next steps, I think where we are now is Hitachi have done their project. Where do we go next? We've already achieved some additional funding for some more projects, and these will be led by the Council of Isles of Scilly ourselves. So these are threefold. First of all, we've got the Go EV project, which is about a charging mechanism and infrastructure for electric vehicles and batteries across the island. And I think there's a misunderstanding that this is about a car share scheme. The end result is a car share scheme, but the driver for this is not car share. The driver for this is having an infrastructure in place that will hold and balance electricity supply across the islands. So not only the charging points, they hold electricity through battery storage, as do the cars, helping us to store electricity when it's in excess and to upload electricity onto the grid when it's required. It gives also an opportunity for people to explore the use of electric vehicles on the island. We want to explore the barriers, give people the choice, and fully engage with the community to explore how electric vehicles might have a future or not on the island. And importantly, there are possibilities within the programme to have trial periods to allow us to learn along the way. I think what's been really interesting is the response from the business community, and the next stage is a business energy efficiency scheme, which allows grants to be given of up to 60% for businesses to install renewable energy and energy efficiency measures on their premises. This will help reduce their ongoing costs and increase profitability to businesses, as well as reduce the amount of carbon used on the islands. The other work that's ongoing through grants that have been committed so far is the waste to energy work, which is around feasibility and design to use, how to explore how best to use waste and give ourselves on-island solutions for maximising solutions that will look at both our own waste and the sewage sludge as potential feedstock for energy production. I think what we mustn't lose sight of is that they're the next projects, but beyond that, the whole programme is around more than that. And I think when we talked last month at the council meeting around homes, I think it's about what does the next home look like, how sustainable is the next home. So we need to look at how smart homes are developed on the islands. There's also a connection with the One Public Estate programme around e-health, and also there's an opportunity to look at what further renewable energy through wind and wave power can be explored on these islands. So Smart Islands has been about finding solutions, and I think it's important to recognise in that there is a need for effective risk management. Working in partnership helps and drawing on expertise of others, but we need to make sure that we have strong project management in place. I think there's been some important lessons learned through the process that's been ongoing around early engagement and closer working with the community and with members. And I've picked up a lot of those factors at Appendix 3 in the questions and answers that were raised at the member workshop that we held last month, and also with members' concerns that have been raised subsequently. There are a number of recommendations set out in the report, and in addition to those recommendations, there'll be a number of further reports brought back to Council. Excuse me. This will include the full business case for the waste-to-energy plant and an exploration of the potential complementary role of the Council and the community venture. And I think from me there's a commitment to make sure that any further projects we include full engagement with members and the community as we move forward in this programme. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Councillor Barclay.
Thank you, Chairman. I was very grateful to receive this report because I was unable to attend the workshop. I fully endorse everything that Nicola has said, and I would like to emphasise the positivity around this project, because I'm old enough and ugly enough to have lived through several major projects in the islands and seen the benefit of off-island electricity, the undersea cable, parity of tariff, etc., etc. And I think that if we miss this opportunity, we will be really doing a grave disservice to our community. We may not recognise it now when we're looking at budgets and finances and so on, but in future years, our community will have good reason to condemn us if we miss this opportunity. Hitachi are playing a fantastic role here. It's a major worldwide company. And if we turn down their offer of help, then I can't believe we would be so foolish. When I spoke in London at the Public Policy Exchange, the audience were just amazed at the level of the strength of our partnerships. For a tiny place to have such strong partners is really, I'm not saying it's unbelievable, but we shouldn't lose sight of that great benefit. And we should look at the benefits of this. I think if we're to be criticised in any way, it is our communication of the scheme to not only our not only to ourselves, to members, but also to the community. We need to, of course, consider the risks to the council, but we also need to consider the risks of failing to take these opportunities. The importance of information is very strong, but we do need, as a community, to own this project. And the number of times you see the statement, external funding, you know, what joy to have external funding. We mustn't lose sight of that. We do need to explore the role of scrutiny, but I think most of all, we need to recognise the urgency of meeting these opportunities in the right manner. The MOU remains the same as it did in 2015, and you know, when you look back, one of the main criticisms of the place has been the level of traffic, for example, on St Mary's. Well, here we've got an opportunity to remove that criticism, something visitors have always complained about. You know, with electric vehicles, we will be so much more eco-friendly. And the business efficiency scheme with grants up to 60%, the waste to energy scheme, it's all good. I really can't emphasize enough how much I think we would be derelict in our duty if we turn away this opportunity. Yes, there are financial implications, but let's look at the benefits, and they are set out in this report somewhere, and I think we should totally address our actions in securing those benefits. I'll stop there for a minute.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sims.
Well, thank you, Marion. You're completely taking the wind out of my sails. I mean, I won't repeat what you said, but I think it's very, very important that we all know that we now, up in London and in many places in the world now, there's a little red light flashing, which represents the City Isles, and they wouldn't really be taking much notice of it. And having talked to the current Home Secretary about this particular issue a couple of years back, he was very engaged with it. You know, we were allocated, I think, 8 minutes, and we ended up with 25 minutes. There's a huge interest elsewhere regarding this project, and I completely agree with Marion. It's been publicised marvellously all over the world, and perhaps not very well here. And I think that has been an issue. And regarding electric vehicles, I think the current government policy is to get rid of fossil fuel vehicles by 2040. I suspect that will come down at some point. And and I fear we could completely get left behind on this. And I can imagine 110 years ago, the council decided to get rid of the horse and cart and get a petrol vehicle to pick up the rubbish. There's possibly been quite a lot of reluctance from an awful lot of people over here. No, we don't want one of those things. We've had horse and carts for years. And I think there is an inertia which we have to break through on this, because the benefits will become very apparent once they're there. But I don't think the benefits are necessarily apparent to people yet because they're not here.
Thank you. Councillor Molson.
Yeah, I thoroughly concur with what has just been said as well, and would encourage the pedal to the metal on this as far as our future is concerned. It's not just our future we're talking about. We're talking about the future of our children and our grandchildren on these islands. We can be cutting edge further than we already are. We already are cutting edge, as Marion has pointed out already, to the rest of the world. And this project, as Steve has just pointed out, has gone global. and I concur with what Steve has said, and he's taken some of the wind out of what I was about to say, is the fact that there is massive global interest in our project because of what we are trying to achieve. And it's not just these islands that are involved. It has gone further. It was mentioned in the Poland climate change that's been going on over the past 2 weeks. I don't know whether you picked that one up. Yeah, it was mentioned there as well. This is not just feathering our cap. This is making life better for everybody on these islands. There are minor bits and pieces as far as money is concerned around the edges, but I declare those as minor. This whole report, I thank Nicola for, and I'm delighted that it's come in this form, and I thoroughly endorse what's in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, all the sales are totally without wind or whatever, so we reiterate positivity around it. I think it's worth dialing back, though, just to say why members wanted this report, and that was about the liability, the future liability to the council. So this process has been really useful in digging down and getting a better understanding, I think, for all members about what the project is, what it has been and what it will be. So, yes, the way that the project is mentioned in throughout all council papers and the One Public Estate stuff is really important to consider for members. And then going through with the workshop and with these existing papers about the liability, I can't really see much risk for the council with the car program, the Go EV stuff. There's a breakpoint at 3 cars and 4 charging points. And if that doesn't work, then we stop the project there. We can do something with the cars, which won't cost money, and the charging points, I understand from discussions, they're going to be modular, so they can be removed quite easily as well. So the liability is pretty minimal there. And in terms of the anaerobic digester, it's a feasibility study, which is only right and proper about whether it actually does work or not. And given that the drive in all other documents for the council in the local plan is about making houses much more sustainable, new builds are going to be much more carbon neutral than existing buildings, I think it needs to be supported. So in that terms, I would propose the recommendations as they stand.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just sort of echo the tone Councillor Marcus was saying. I think any negativity from members isn't because of the ambitions of a scheme, it's because of perhaps the way we feel we've been engaged. And I was delighted to hear Nicola talk about lessons being learned from a workshop we had a few weeks ago. I think if we can be better engaged, we can better sell the opportunities to the people on the street. So I'd just like to think that moving forward, we are at the early stages of conversations. We are fully engaged in the whys and the wherefores, and we're not sort of hearing things secondhand and picking up when potentially decisions have been taken which could put risk and liability in our direction. So I sort of echo what's already been said and just hope that going forward we're not in a similar situation to what we were 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, indeed. I mean, I think I have to acknowledge, we all acknowledge how much work's been done and the real wish and commitment of this council and all our partners for this groundbreaking project to succeed. But I've been very grateful for the comments, especially by Councillor Marcus and Councillor Williams, that it's a question of assessing this perhaps and hopefully small amount of risk that this council will carry if we do have an issue, mainly I would argue, around the management and the possibility of failure of the community venture company, of it not being as viable as we all hope it would. So I read paragraph 44 with some concern. And so I really welcome paragraph 41, where a greater analysis of the relationship between the community venture company and the council will be brought to this council as soon as possible. And I do think that's really, really important and will be really helpful. Also, just on a practical level, I'd like a little bit of explanation, please, because recommendation number 3, and I hope we can perhaps take these recommendations independently, seems slightly out of step with recommendation 6, because we appear in recommendation 3 to be agreeing that we will endorse the progression of projects, whereas I think, as Councillor Marcus has actually said, what we're actually agreeing with regard to the anaerobic digester and the gasifier is that we give a relatively comfortable sum of money towards the progression of a detailed design plan, after which that and the financial implications will come back to council. So I don't know whether or not Matt Stokes could perhaps give us some guidance on whether or not we ought to amend that, because it seems to me that the two are slightly counterintuitive.
Yeah, I think in terms of recommendation 3, that could be amended so the anaerobic digester gasifier could come out, because the projects above, they've got external funding, their entire projects, they're ongoing, and I think the AD gasifier is covered in recommendation 6. So there's a duplication that's not necessary there.
So you're suggesting that comes out of recommendation 3 and goes into number 6? Yeah.
Well, number 6 covers it.
Number 6 covers it? Yeah, okay. Councillor Sims, please.
Just in terms of risk, now it's innovation, and you don't get funding for innovation unless there's some sort of risk. It just doesn't, that's why you get the funding. But in terms of risk to the council, the risk of not doing it is pretty well incalculable. I mean, the CV scheme is pivotal to the whole thing. It's the axle which the rest of it works around, and if that we don't approve it, I have I've got a strong feeling that the whole project will flounder, and the reputational risk and the financial risk to the council would be, well, basically incalculable compared to what I consider to be borderline anodyne risks of proceeding with the process.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. There's been a lot of talk about the electric vehicles, and rightly so. It's the largest part of this. I would say, actually, for the council's point of view, the anaerobic digester and gasifier is the most important bit for us. And I would fully endorse taking that forward, even though it is costing us some money. We're a bit used to being externally funded 100%, aren't we? So I do have, just picking up on concerns around risk, I think for me, one of the biggest risks is around the community venture. Ultimately, it's a very, very important part of Smart Islands, and it will receive all the assets. And therefore, we want it to work, and I want it to work. And as I said, I'm an advisory board member on it. I think I would like us to give the community venture greater help, in a sense. I think it needs our support. I'll just come back to, I'm going to propose an extra recommendation in a moment. Decision making, as Councillor Williams picked up on, I think at best it was murky. And I think this has been quite a frustration for a lot of members. We are where we are with it now. I think we need to learn lessons from it. So if I may, I'd like to propose, just to push this to a record number of recommendations, an extra 3 recommendations, which I have discussed with others before. And the first one is around the Smart Islands Partnership. And I would insist that this is very important because it is around risk of the community venture. And so it would read that the council formally requests that the Smart Islands Partnership, make the community venture a full partner of the Smart Islands Partnership at the earliest opportunity. And I've discussed that with Jim Wrigley extensively. Also, reviews the Memorandum of Understanding specifically to enable more effective communication about the overall Smart Islands programme, and B, improve the leadership and community engagement in the future, because those things have been missing. And I think we need to use our leverage as the main Smart Islands partners now, delivering projects within the programme, to push for this. Secondly, I'd like to propose a recommendation of the decision-making process of this particular piece of work be referred to scrutiny committee for some investigation, but particularly to learn lessons for the future. And thirdly, that the council works closely with the community venture to help it develop a full business plan, and risk management strategy. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford.
I would like to second all that Councillor Smith has said, but I would also like any new projects to come to scrutiny as well. I think we did discuss this in the workshop, didn't we?
New Smart Islands project.
The new Smart Islands projects.
Thank you, Nicola.
I think the recommendation that Jonathan's just alluded to, I think would cover that, because what we're trying to say is that we need to look back and we need to learn from what's happened in the past, and we need to agree a new way forward. And I think it would be eminently sensible for the scrutiny to help us with that work.
Thank you. Councillor Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. I acknowledge the huge opportunities that this project will hopefully give us. However, I would just say we would be remiss in our duty, having just listened to Jerry Daly, if we didn't just acknowledge in open session, very frankly, that there is risk, however small, and that we fully intend to both manage it and monitor it. And I think that's why my contribution has been hopefully not negative, but must flag that situation, which is obviously mentioned several times within the report. So I'm not negative, and I'm pleased that several colleagues have agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Molson.
Yeah, coming to the risk as far as the CV is concerned, I understand at the moment that the CV has only got 2 directors, which is one is RDS and the other one is a solicitor. RDS obviously has got a significant amount of time tied up. I would suggest, and I don't think it's appropriate to propose it here, but I would suggest that there is at least 1, if not 2, members appointed to the board of the CV that are people that have run businesses in the past, so that they can put decent acumen within that to try and mitigate any of that risk of failure.
Thank you. Russell, would you like to comment on that?
It's not our business.
In terms of that last one, I'm not quite sure where the council sits in being able to sort of vote on putting directors directly onto an organisation.
That's why I didn't propose it. It's a suggestion.
Yeah, it's noted, and I think it would need to work with the community venture for them to take that on board. I don't think we can impose directors on them.
Thank you. Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 37 of the report does suggest that. It says, during early 2019, the community venture will expand its board by at least 1 more director to provide additional financial and business planning expertise.
Thank you. Councillor, excuse me. A monitoring officer, Matt, thank you.
Almost elevated. Almost, so close. Just a point to make is, adding to what Russell said, is of course if members are appointed to the board of the CV, then they're going to be conflicted every time those issues come before the council, so that needs to be borne in mind.
Thank you. Councillor Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just thought there was another person appointed to the CV board. I thought a certain lady had already been appointed to that board, so there was 3, without mentioning names.
I believe that they've resigned.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Just a point of clarification on Councillor Molson's point. Having discussed this with Jim Wrigley, they are going to be looking for new directors very early in the new year. So that issue is live and being addressed.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Sims.
Final point for me, I hope. My only beef with this whole thing has been in terms of process, and I think a number of other members share that concern. And because of that and lessons learned, I do think we need a procedural process, as Jonathan and Avril alluded to bring capital projects, once they reach a certain threshold, to be discussed before they really get going, to the scrutiny committee. And whether the scrutiny committee wishes to scrutinise them is another matter altogether, but at least they passed they passed through the eyes of members at an early stage.
Thank you. Right, I'm sorry, Councillor Mumford.
I believe Councillor Marcus proposed all the recommendations.
Yeah, just,
Councillor Roger.
I mean, I'd listened to all of this and had a lot of discussions on it, and I agree with everyone, wind out of all our sails. But we must, in order to smooth this path, we must communicate at the simplest level, no disrespect to anyone, to our community on this, because it's them that will stand in its way potentially, and it's them that give us the questions, which now, thanks to the following the workshop and this report, we are more armed to answer. We must bear that. I feel we have to bear that in mind every step of the way on this project in order for this to be successful.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, I was just going to propose I proposed the first 8 recommendations with the amendment that Councillor Grottick suggested about removing the AD and gasifier from recommendation 3. And I'd like to propose the extra 3 recommendations from Councillor Smith.
Councillor Mumford.
And I would like to second all those, please.
Okay. Right, 2 questions. Matt, do I need to take the amendment first, or can I take them all together?
So I think we're settled that Dan has proposed exactly what everybody is thinking, I think.
Okay.
So you can just go to the vote.
Okay.
And I don't think you need to bother reading them all out.
No.
Because
thank you.
My wife is expecting me home for Christmas. It's a long list now.
Thank you. Is there any objections that I take all these together? No. Right, we've had a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Unanimous. Thank you very much. I would like at this juncture, though, just to thank Senior Manager Nicola for her work in producing this paper and the in-depth workshop members have had regarding this paper. Nicola has had to pick up the work started by others, and unfortunately, it has been discovered that full, transparent information about the Smart Islands project has not always been communicated with its various implications to full council, which has also been pointed out by a number of you today. This will now change, and further papers concerning the various projects will soon be brought before full council to consider carefully and positively, depending on the merits of the business case. There will also continue to be review points and break clauses in place should projects not proceed as planned. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on now to item 15, Scrutiny Committee recommendations, the report of our Officer for Policy and Scrutiny.
I think that falls to me, Chair, as Bob's
Thank
not
you.
here. So I'd ask you to take the report as read. The recommendations are relatively straightforward. I'll try and answer questions if there are any, but I think also as Chair of the Sponsors Board, you might be able to assist, and Chairman of Scrutiny might be able to assist given the discussion there's been there.
Councillor Mumford.
I would just like to make a change to recommendation 2, that the chairman of the sponsors board be asked to, I don't know how to word it, but at least annually to report to the scrutiny committee. Matt, you might, sorry?
Report annually.
Yeah, change,
report annually.
Change periodically, report
Yeah.
to annually. That's.
If everybody would be in agreement with that.
Councillor Grottick.
Obviously, as members are aware, the chairman actually chairs the sponsor board and I sit there as well. So obviously, in a way, we have an interest in this, but I'd just like to give you an update because at the last sponsor board meeting, which had been delayed and the chairman had been trying very hard to manage to actually get a new date. But when we finally did meet, one of the agenda items was a full discussion of how we could improve communications back to our respective councils. We were very much supported in this by the Deputy Leader of Cornwall Council, Julian German, and the Chair, myself, Councillor German and other members of the sponsor board do intend considering this a work in progress so that we can make the communication streams better, more effective, transparent, which I think is what Councillor Mumford was asking for.
Thank you. Councillor Molson.
Just a suggestion, rather than it be annual, why don't we have a report from the sponsors board after every sponsors board meeting?
There's no problem with that. Yeah, I'm happy for that.
I'm happy with that. Are you happy with that? Matt?
Yes.
After each meeting, how many times do you meet a year?
I think it's 3 times.
It's supposed to be 3 times, but it slipped a bit and there was a period of almost 6 months between one and the next one, but hopefully we'll now get back on track.
Yeah, well actually 3 times that works in with the 3 scrutiny meetings we have a year.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will work into each scrutiny meeting.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll just pick up that from the discussion in scrutiny, this was quite a key finding actually around sponsored board information. So I'd certainly second that proposal. And just nitpicking slightly, but the report does have somewhat of a lack of sign-off here, which I'd like to pick up, please.
Thank you. If there are no further questions on this item, I'd like to take both recommendations together. Recommendation 1, that the social value considerations are incorporated into the options analysis received when determining the agreed scope of collaborative arrangements. And item 2, that the chairman of the sponsors board be asked after each meeting to report to the scrutiny committee on the development of further collaboration arrangements and the monitoring of performance as reflected in the overarching collaboration agreement and related agreements. Councillor Marcus? Thank you. Councillor Molson seconding. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? It's unanimous. Thank you. Move on to item 16, the Isles of City Health and Social Care Integration Programme, PID, page 317, the report of our Director of Children's Services. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't talk for long because I know it's been a long morning, but just to, and also partly because the project initiation document has also gone through scrutiny as part of our processes now when we're looking at capital projects. So it's about approving the project initiation document, which is the equivalent to a strategic outline case, and it's part of doing a HMI Treasury Green Book compliant business case to support a single service and estate solution for health, housing and care on the islands for the next 30 years. We also wanted to bring a few things into one place, which is also to say you note that the production of an outline business case is already funded through a One Public Estate funding bid a couple of years ago, and that's to reassure members that that money is in place and is being monitored appropriately, and that also that we have, since we went to scrutiny, put in a bid to phase 7 of One Public Estate to part fund the production of a full business case if and when we have a credible outline business case. So therefore you can see sort of the building blocks we've put in place to get us to this process. And I think also to come back on some of the points raised by external audit around value for money, what this represents here, this is about strategic commissioning, this is about working with partners, it's about addressing a key area of governance risk that we've had in the past around adult social care, and it's also about developing really robust financial models into the future. So yeah, I'm happy to take questions now because I think it has gone through quite a lot of scrutiny already.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford.
Well, I would just like to say I'm so pleased to see this project start. I think we've been waiting for a few years to start to get it off the ground. And I shall be pleased to see the first lot of plans or whatever. Maybe I should book my place then.
Thank you. Councillor Molson.
Yeah, after Councillor Mumford's booked her place, can I have a second? However, and I fully endorse it, but I'm delighted to see it getting off the ground. The only one question I've got is that £50,000, is it going to have a serious impact on the money that's used in the Better Care Fund that we apply at the moment? That's the only question I've got.
Yeah, there will be financial implications. So I think that, again, I hope it's clear throughout this report. You're not committing yourself to that decision at this stage anyway. We've got lots of gateways. The first thing you need is a credible outline business case. We are also then going to submit a bid to, and if we do have a credible outline business case, we'll submit an application to Wave 7 STP capital funding. If we get that, we'll get the match for the One Public Estate funding. So actually, therefore, it won't have that impact on the Better Care Fund. If we don't get that, I need to come back to members with a range of options about what you want to do, because of course, regardless of what we do, we are going to have capital liabilities around providing care on the islands anyway, whether we look at an integrated estate model in the future, which is more likely to attract public investment, or whether we look at refurbishment or replacement of our existing care home. So again, it's about me giving you a range of options about how we are going to invest current revenue streams. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, it's a really good project, really exciting. And it's really good that you've taken on board the comments from scrutiny and added that extra bit of governance into the terms of reference for the programme board. Just want to make sure that that continues and that we learn from those lessons, keep on getting learned, and that we keep on getting that information back to full council so we can answer those questions out in the community about what's happening. So.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
And actually, just to pick up on those points from Councillor Marcus, question on page 322 on the table in terms of the milestones there. So will each of those milestones be reflected by a report back to full council or to scrutiny? Page 322. You got a table there, wave 5. Yeah.
And then we will come back to you with the OUC sign-off in May 2019.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
thank
I'll
you.
let you know about how we do it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And also just to say thanks for putting in the stuff about the off-islands as previously discussed.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford.
I would like to propose recommendations 1, 2 and 3.
Councillor Guy. Thank you. I don't think I need to read them out, do I? Can you all read? Okay. So we've had a proposer and seconder. All those in favour? Any against? It's unanimous again. Thank you. Right, item number 17 is in the hands of our Vice Chairman. Thank you.
Just wait for everyone who's declared an interest to leave us.
Vice Chair, I actually didn't get a chance to declare an interest, but I think I ought to. So.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you. If you could note that, obviously, in the minutes that Councillor Nellam has left. Thank you.
I'm a paid-up member of the IB, but I'm not a director or anything. I'm a non-tourism related member. So I consider I can legitimately stay and participate.
Actually, I've just realised that as being supportive, I also join the IP as a member and pay a small subscription every year just so that I am engaged in the process. Could we have some advice, please, Matt?
Numbers are dwindling. So if we're to remain corporate, we probably need to take a pragmatic approach to that. And I'd suggest that that's at such a low level interest that it doesn't create an interest under the code. So please stay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just like to add, I'm a member of the IP, just for the record as well, but we do have a general exemption as far as tourism matters are concerned anyway, do we not?
We do, and moreover, anyone on the islands is perfectly welcome to join the island partnerships, as far as I understand, so we don't have any preferential treatment. Right, is everybody content that we carry on with this item?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. It probably won't take as long as that introduction did to get through the item, I hope. Basically, this is just to bring to the table the destination management plan, which was produced earlier in the year by the Islands Partnership, just to endorse this in principle and also to note the need for an action plan, and we'll bring forward to members details of the action plan and our responsibilities in terms of its financial, legal, resource and risk implications for the Council in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if everyone is comfortable, I will assume that the report is read and then obviously take comment. I'm very pleased, just to start the conversation, I'm very pleased to see this coming to full council. I think there's a general acknowledgement by everyone around this table that tourism is our key industry. And while we welcome diversification, because we have such a beautiful landscape that we would like to share with our welcome visitors, I firmly believe tourism will always be the mainstay of this economy. Councillor Smith, I think you put your light on first.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair. I'd like to pick up on 2 points in the report. Just look at paragraphs 11 and 14. There does seem to be a bit of a contradiction there in terms of whether this supports unconditional or not.
Nicola, would you like to comment on that?
I don't think there is a contradiction.
No.
So you're only being asked to approve in principle at the moment, and it would be inappropriate for you to unconditionally commit to the DMP. You need that other opportunity to look at the action plan.
No, that's fine, just for clarity, thank you.
If I could just add that I believe the action plan is actually in the hands of the council now, so that hopefully work on the implications of that action plan can be brought back very speedily. Nicola?
I'll work with David Jackson to make sure we'll work on the right version, yes.
That's warmly welcomed, thank you.
There are references to the DMP in our local plan, I believe. We did actually reference it directly. So on that basis, I think we absolutely need to endorse it, else it's somewhat sort of floating. So I would, I think I'm second. I would second all three recommendations. I think it's something we do need to do just on a logistical basis, if nothing else.
Thank you. I apologise. Somebody's head was in the way.
Yes,
Sorry.
yeah, thank you, Jeff. I've realised line of sight is not at its best. Yes, I've never been in favour of the council's divorce from tourism, which happened a few years ago. You probably know my background. I was appointed tourism officer in 1988 by the member on my right. And I think this endorsement is actually a step in the right direction, and I fully endorse the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Proposed. Should we take them all together? Is anyone any objections? No. Councillor Marcus has proposed the recommendation. Councillor Sims has seconded them. All those in favour? Anybody against? Accepted. Thank you. If we welcome back the chairman, I'll just leave him to formally close the meeting. Thank you for your contributions for that. Oh, I beg your pardon. And please remember we have a part 3 as well.
Thank you very much. So we'll now close the meeting and move on to part 3. So, excuse me. Yes. Could I have a proposer, please, and a seconder that we move into part 3?
I'll propose that, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Molson. All those in favour? Thank you.